Hey guys, it's Mr. V. In this video we are going to look at the planets of the solar system. So in the last video we looked at the solar system and just some of the things we have in it, such as the sun and planets and comets and moons. Today we're going to look more specifically at the planets that live in our solar system and just a few basic facts about them. So this is the second video in this little series. It is running a little bit behind and I apologize for that. But most of you have seen plenty of the trouble we've had during the first week of this remote learning term. So we're just going to have to kind of go with it. Okay, let's look at the planets of the solar system. Okay, so the first set of planets are called the terrestrial planets. As you know me, I like my Greek root words. The word terrestrial has in it the Greek word terra. Terra is the Greek word for the Earth, our planet. So the terrestrial planet are all of those that are Earth-like. So they're like Earth. So the Earth-like planets. Now all of these planets are rocky planets. They are made out of silicates. Silicates is the chemical term for rocks. So silicates, and they have metals in them. And so all of them are Earth-like in that they are rocks, some with different gases and liquids on their surface, but they're all made of a big rock. So let's look at a couple of them. I've got these images here. Let's grab them up. The first planet closest to the sun is Mercury. So Mercury is named after one of the Greek gods, the messenger god. Mercury is the fastest of the planets. It zooms around the sun really, really quickly. 1 year only takes 88 Earth days to complete. And you might notice here, 88 days for a year, 58 days, almost 56 days for a day. So one Mercury day is almost as long as 2/3 of its year. There's the school bell. Missed that sound yet? Yeah, me neither. So Mercury is tidally locked to the sun, or at least partially. So the same part of the surface points towards the sun a lot of the time, which is why the temperatures get so huge on Mercury. 427 degrees Celsius, that's massive. But for the rest of the time, when it's not facing the sun, it doesn't get sunlight for a very long time. So it also gets very, very cold on Mercury. So that's a very big temperature range. Next up in our journey through our solar system, we get to Venus. Venus is quite a bit bigger. It is actually almost the same size as the Earth is. I cannot make these line up. That is going to bother me, but we'll just deal with it. Venus is almost the same size as the Earth. It's why Venus is sometimes called Earth's sister planet. Now Venus has a lot of greenhouse gases, in particular sulfur dioxide in its atmosphere. And what that does is it locks all of the heat that Venus gets from the sun into the planet. So it has a really, really bad greenhouse effect going on. And what that greenhouse effect is doing is it is ramping up the temperature of Venus to the point that it is even hotter than Mercury. And Mercury is closer to the sun, so you would think it'd be hotter, but it's not. Venus is actually much hotter than Mercury is because of the greenhouse gas effect within Venus. Right, next up in our journey is the planet you're all most familiar with. It is good old planet Earth. It is where we live. Now, planet Earth, what makes it special is that it is the only known planet in the entire universe that has life on it. It is in that perfect sweet spot away from the sun that it is cool enough, but it's also close enough to be warm enough for life to happen. So our temperature range is between negative 25 degrees and 45 degrees Celsius, an average of about 20, which means we can have liquid water. And so we have liquid water on our planet, and that's what allows us to have life. Okay, Earth is the only planet that we know of thousands and thousands of planets that we've discovered. It's the only one that we know of that has life on it. Now, the next planet, and the last of the terrestrial or Earth-like planets, is planet Mars. Planet Mars is about half the size of Earth, but its days are very, very similar to ours. So an Earth day is 24 hours, a Mars day is 24 hours and 37 minutes. Mars has some ice caps which contain water. So there is actually water on Mars, but because of how cold it is, negative 63 degrees Celsius on average, because of how cold it is, it's not liquid water, it's frozen water, ice, which isn't very helpful for us. Now, Mars is the only planet other than Earth that has moons. It has 2 moons. Both of them captured asteroids, which makes them much, much smaller than our moon. Now, Mercury and Venus don't have any moons at all. They were too close to the sun to actually form moons at all. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. They're the closest of our planets. They're the Earth-like planets. And after Mars, we then have the asteroid belt. I'm not even going to try and draw them prettily. We have the asteroid belt, which separates these inner planets from the outer planets. So, the outer planets. The technical name is the Jovian planets. These are all of the giant planets. Now, they're called Jovian planets after the very first of the giants and the most giant of the giants, Jupiter, the king of the planets. Jupiter is named after the Greek god Jupiter, who was the king of the gods. And another name for Jupiter is Jove, which is where Jovian comes from. So these are the planets that are all like Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is the biggest of all the planets in our solar system. At almost 140,000 kilometers big, it is huge. Still not as big as the Sun though. The Sun is still much, much bigger. Although the way Jupiter was constructed, it is made of almost the same stuff as the Sun is. But Jupiter isn't big enough to start fusion, and so it is stuck being a planet. Now, Jupiter is made out of gas. It's not actually solid at all. If you were to fall into Jupiter, you wouldn't go splat against the ground. You would just keep falling in. You just keep falling and falling and falling, till eventually the pressure gets so big that it squishes you. You never actually hit solid ground. One of the interesting facts about Jupiter, if you see this orange spot here, that orange spot is actually a massive, massive storm. A storm that has been going for hundreds of years, and it will go for hundreds more as well. So it's a perpetual storm that's just stuck on the planet, and it just keeps going around. It's a massive cyclone that never ends. You'll notice Jupiter's days are actually very, very short, slightly less than 10 hours. And that's because these gases are moving so very quickly along the very, very top of the planet. The next of the planets is the planet that God liked so much that he put rings on it. It is Saturn, with its rings around it. And it's the most prominent thing about Saturn is it has these rings. Now those rings are asteroids that Saturn has captured. They are dust particles left from Saturn's formation. They're a bunch of rocks. Some of them fairly big, a couple of kilometers. Some of them so small that you could hold them in your hand. Now, what is interesting about these rings is that they can extend out as much as 80,000 kilometers from the surface. Yet, if you were to look at how thick it is, it'd only be 20 meters. 20 meters. We have trees on Earth that are taller than this ring is wide. And that's just crazy. Saturn has the most number of moons that we know of, at 82 confirmed moons. And these are moons, so big objects that are not part of the ring. So they are around the outside of Saturn, but not really within these rings. So if they're in the ring, they're not considered to be a moon. Jupiter, just a quick side note, Jupiter has 79 confirmed moons, of which only 5 are big enough to be significant. Saturn has 4 that are big enough to be significant. Now, within the Jovian planets, we do tend to group Jupiter and Saturn together as the gas giants. The next 2 planets are also giants, and technically also gas giants, but more specifically we call them ice giants because they're made of a lot of ice. So we call these next 2 the ice giants. They're made of ices of methane or carbon dioxide or water, and it's what gives them this bluey color. So the first one is Uranus, named after the Greek god of Uranus, the god of the sky. So Uranus, yes, don't laugh. Uranus is a planet that for a long time we thought was the last planet in our sky. Now, Uranus also has rings, just like, where's my pointer? Just like Saturn, it has some rings, but they're so faint that you can't really see them with the naked eye. You actually have to get close enough with a satellite to be able to see those rings on Uranus. Uranus is also special in that it doesn't rotate the way the other planets do. This way. No, it's actually rolling around. It has an axis of 89 degrees. So it's basically rolling around the solar system. We're not actually sure exactly why. It may have hit another planet or a really big object at some point in its history which caused it to flip over. Or something else. We're actually not 100% sure yet. So, Uranus. Now, every planet up until Saturn are able to be seen by the naked eye. Saturn is very hard to see, but you can still see it. And Jupiter is so bright that it's often confused for stars. But you can't actually see Uranus with the naked eye. You need a telescope to see it. Now, the last of our official planets is the planet Neptune. Look at that deep blue color. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that gorgeous? Now, Neptune also is an ice giant. It's made of a lot of water ice. But Neptune is not as cold. If you look at these temperatures, Uranus is actually colder than Neptune, even though Neptune is much further away. Now, the reason for that is not 100% clear, possibly due to the awkward rotation of Uranus versus Neptune. Most of the inner heat of both Uranus and Neptune, though, comes from inside, so it's probably the internals of Neptune that makes it a little bit warmer. And Neptune was not discovered by either naked eye, so you just look up at the sky, or by telescope. It was actually first discovered with math. Math told us there should be another planet out there. It wasn't until a bit later in the 1800s that we finally used a telescope to actually see Neptune. But yeah, math is what discovered Neptune, which is just crazy interesting. Okay, the last thing we want to quickly look at, and I do mean very quickly, because we have been going for a little while, are the dwarf planets. So, I did get a picture of the dwarf planets. That's not the picture I was after. I'll quickly see if I can find the other one that I had. I did have another one. Here it is. This is the one I wanted to show you first. These are the dwarf planets. Obviously, not the moon. The moon is not a dwarf planet, although it is bigger than some of these other dwarf planets are, which is, again, crazy interesting. So the dwarf planets, these are the biggest ones. We have a couple more, but the biggest ones are Pluto, Eris, Haumea, Makemake, and Ceres. Pluto being the most famous one because we used to call the planet, and then it got demoted. Sad face. I still have a special place in my heart for Pluto, and obviously Pluto also has a special place in its heart for us. It actually has a heart on its surface. We never saw Pluto until 2018, like this closer picture of it. Before then, all we knew about it was a dot. So the dwarf planets. The dwarf planets are objects that are definitely bigger than asteroids, but they don't have all the properties of a planet. So a planet needs to be big enough so that gravity holds it together and makes it a proper sphere. Now Haumea and Ceres, they're not perfect spheres. In fact, the other ones aren't either. They also need to be in their own orbits, not orbiting around another planet. So the moon, while big enough to be a dwarf planet, is a moon because it orbits the Earth. So these are the dwarf planets, or at least the main dwarf planets. And the second picture shows us where they are. So we've got Ceres here near the asteroid belt. We've got Pluto. We've got Makemake. Haumea is also in the Kuiper belt here, and then we've got Eris just around the outside. Pluto, of course, the first one that we discovered, and is also the first one that was renamed to be a dwarf planet. So those are the planets, and I suppose dwarf planets, in our solar system. So going from the Sun, we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, then Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Hope you liked that overview. By all means, you should definitely look into these planets, look up some more information about them, because there's a lot to learn about them, and they are just very, very cool. But that was a quick overview of the planets. Hope you enjoyed that. I will see you in the next video.